Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. In the last few days, you and I, we've been workshopping a problem, a conundrum, a pickle, and wondering what we would do if we were in the shoes of Mordecai and Esther, who suddenly have been given a blank check by King Xerxes to somehow solve a problem of his making, and that he signed off, he authorized an edict that said that on a given day, the whole Persian populace can turn on the Jews and kill all of them and take all of their stuff. Very bad edict. Now the chief architect behind that edict has been impaled, and he's outside the window up there rotting on a stick. It's a pretty ugly situation, but we can't be thinking about that gore and violence right now. We got to think about how we get the word out with this new edict to not undercut the existing edict, because you can't just countermand it directly, but you got to find some clever way with words to write a new edict that will bring about effectively a frustration of the intention of the previous edict while saving face for the king. Very, very delicate, very tricky. And I asked you for feedback on that, and I got a whole bunch. Thank you for that, by the way. Most of that came in over on the subreddit, reddit.com/TMBH podcast is where we've had a lot of the conversation over the years for this podcast. I do think that is probably about to change. Patreon, where a lot of you support the program, has opened things up. So now there's an option to have an unpaid membership. And it's different than the paid memberships. You still give, little perks and bonuses and stuff to say thank you to those who are kicking in. But you make it so it's the kind of place where everybody can participate in the discussion, and you just move all of your discussion over there. They're really encouraging that. They're wanting to make Patreon the hub for supporting and even non-supporting members of the community around different podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff. And I'm still learning how all of that works. But in the meantime, for a long time, we've been on Reddit, and that's a place where crazy things can happen, but not really in our little corner of it, because you all are awesome. And I don't know if I tell you that enough, if you totally realize it, but when you get this many people together on the internet and then talk about religious things, we're supposed to hate each other and cannibalize each other, and we're supposed to have all kinds of incidents and weird just stupid stuff. And we don't have any of that. You all are great to each other. And I wish I could just hold it up and show the whole world and be like, hey, it could be like this, y'all. Check out these people. They're wonderful. But I don't know. The internet's a big place. The point is, I see it. I don't know who else does, but I see it. And y'all handle your business wonderfully. I really like your internet game. I like your style. Over there on Reddit, in this particular discussion, a bunch of you threw out ideas for what edict you might write if you were Mordecai and Esther. One common thread was to bog the whole thing down with bureaucratic requirements like licenses to participate or background checks that take 10 months to get through, which would then render the whole event moot, because that's longer than the amount of time before the scheduled event that Haman put together. So many of you proposed bureaucracy as a way to bog the whole thing down. Some others of you proposed more of a carrot approach to writing this edict instead of the stick. Like, hey, we'll give you money from the estate of Haman to not participate, or we'll give any of the Jews or anyone who wants to defend the Jews on that day a really nice, fresh set of armor and weaponry, which would be worth a whole bunch of money, funded by Haman's estate and made by the king's blacksmiths. I thought that was a pretty clever idea. But it seemed like the general theme from most of your responses was, yeah, this is a tricky one. This is not going to be easy to solve. So yesterday we looked at how Mordecai and Esther framed things up, and we discovered that it's a carbon copy. It's an exact match of how Haman drew things up and how he distributed the original edict. So again, we're getting that sense of symmetry and balance throughout this book. If at any point in our conversations, by the way, you're like, there's so much symmetry and balance in this book, when are we going to go and just cash in all of that to see all of the structure and its beauty? The answer is, I am not forgetting that. But we're going to do it at the end when we have the whole thing in front of us. So just, we got a pin in that one. Trust me. And so we've got this matching approach to how to write it and who to distribute the messages to, except that the Jews are now included. They're CC'd on the email by Mordecai and Esther, making them participants, recipients of the command instead of the direct objects of the command as it was under Haman. So this then is what the edict says. Esther 8, verse 11. The king's edict, written by Mordecai and Esther, granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force or any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. Okay, so this edict pertains to one day, just the exact same way the other one pertained to one day. They pertain to the same day, so there's more symmetry there. And there's even more symmetry yet in that the other edict says, kill all the Jews, and this edict says, hey, Jews, fight back and kill everybody who's trying to kill you. Now, this is not super fun. It's not light material. It's a tragedy, really, because the insecurity and bumblingness and the dynastic baggage of the Achaemenid Empire that Xerxes carries with him after 4 generations of leadership, it's created this bizarre catch-22 where this is a war entirely created by the throne. Think about it. Nobody had leave to go and kill another people group inside the boundaries of Persia. Persia was proud of its cosmopolitan, diverse nature. Persia thought diversity was its strength, kind of. And nobody was authorized to go do anything. You couldn't get away with stuff like this. It was one of those nobody, and then nothing kind of things. And then the throne from Susa, go ahead and kill all the Jews. What, really? Oh, and keep their stuff? Amazing, said some people. And now the same throne is sending out another edict the exact same way, with all the same pomp and circumstance and fanfare and publicity. It costs a lot of money to send an edict like this out. It isn't free. They don't just say it and then it happens. It costs a ton of money to do this. A lot of man hours involved. Now they're sending out another one that says it should not just be a massacre. It should be a war. And I guess whoever wins, wins. XOXO Xerxes. What? Now, I mean, think about if that happened right now in the country where you live. I don't know. Maybe you live in a country where something like that would happen. In my country, that seems impossible, but nothing seems impossible in the last 10 or 12 years. I don't know. There's just some weird stuff going on right now. We are certainly in the birth pangs of a strange new time in the history of the West and of my country. But theoretically, hopefully, it would be far-fetched and ridiculous to have a king, a president, so inept that they would create a civil war, not even on purpose because they wanted a civil war, but just out of bumbling ineptitude and stupidity and clerical sloppiness. Can you imagine a situation where the sitting president of the United States was like, all right, well, we're going to kill, I mean, I can't even joke about this. I can't even pick a people group within society. There's no way for me to play this. So you're going to kill Group X. Anybody who doesn't like Group X in the country, we're just going to kill them. I don't really like that law got passed, but I wasn't paying attention. I should have vetoed it, but I didn't. Law is the law. Can't really make that go away. So that's what's going to happen. And then there's some political turmoil. Maybe a midterm election happens in there somewhere. And now a new law gets passed that is like, no, people group X in the United States, actually, there'll be no penalty on this one day for you to kill anybody you're pretty sure is trying to kill you. And by the way, both edicts are just for everybody, not even just fighting men or anybody who's armed, just anybody. Can you imagine? I mean, this is insanity what's about to go down here. And I think this is one of those places where the 2,500 years that exist between right now, as we're thinking these thoughts together, and back then, that 2,500 years sort of softens this. It feels like a savager time when people did crazier things, and that's just how the stuff was back then. But it hadn't been like that ever in the entire history of the Persian Empire. And it wasn't really like that in the entire history of the Babylonian Empire before that. This is weird. This is unprecedented. Remember, the citadel of Susa was disturbed by this. This was not business as usual, even for them. No matter how shocking and horrifying and upsetting you imagine this to be, it's more than that. And I think it's made even crazier in that it's also calculated. Both edicts don't have the ability or the will to address the issue right now. Like, let's just settle it. Let's get it over with. Nope. It's scheduled out for the better part of a year. It's just hanging out there like that No Time to Die trailer was from 2018 all the way until it finally came out 3 years later. I mean, I like James Bond, but eventually, like, put out the movie. You just know that it's coming, and it's just sitting there. Except this is a massive race war that's just scheduled inside of a kingdom now. And you're still like going to work and doing stuff around town and seeing all the people you're going to have a race war with. And it's scheduled like there's a literal release date for the race war that just looms out there on the horizon. What must this have been like? I mean, it was crazy before the counter edict, but then the counter edict goes out and it must have been even weirder and more strained with everybody readying themselves to fight their neighbors. What an unusual and dark and violent and horrifying time. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into the details of this edict and wrestle with the modern morality questions of the whole thing next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.